hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and I'm going to be flying out to Las Vegas in about a week's time to go to the world's biggest hypnotherapy conference called HypnoThoughts Live. And while I'm there, I'm going to be doing 2 talks and a 1-day workshop. And the 2 talks are, one is on nested loops made easy, which is my way of doing stories within stories within stories. And I'm in the process of writing a book, which is based on quantum physics linked to the world of how we think. And it's called The Second Simulation. That's the book I'm writing on. So I'm going to be doing a talk at HypnoThoughts about simulation theory and the 3-body problem as a metaphor for personal change. I'm also going to be doing a 1-day workshop on nested loops to actually teach people the skills. But what you're about to listen to here is a conversation that I had with Antonio Perez, and he is also going to be at HypnoThoughts, and he's going to be talking about improv and how the comedic principles of improv are actually good for neuroplasticity and resilience and thinking on your feet, and actually quite good for hypnotherapists to actually work in real time with, let's say, challenging situations. So if you'd like to listen to our conversation, that's what you're going to listen to right now. It's not a hypnosis session. It's a conversation about hypnosis and about some of the principles that can make hypnotists even better hypnotists. So if that sounds like it's of interest, let me know. And if you want to find out more about what I'm doing in Las Vegas, maybe you're US based, maybe you're Nevada based, and you'd like to see me in person rather than on a podcast, in which case you can still get tickets for HypnoThoughts Live, in which case check out the link and you can see my courses there, but you can also just get tickets and see some amazing presenters that's going to be in HypnoThoughts Live at the Sahara Hotel, and that's on the Las Vegas Strip. So if that's of interest, check out that link. Otherwise, relax and enjoy this conversation with myself and Antonio. Take care.
Hey, HypnoThoughts family, it's Antonio. Got Adam Cox here. We're going to talk about our talks at HypnoThoughts Live, which is like a week. So close. How you doing, Adam?
I'm doing good, Antonio. It's early here and sunny in England.
I've heard it's unbelievably sunny. Like we were talking about, it's like heat wave, scorching skin sunny.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go to Vegas to cool down. Like it's a generational heat wave. Like I'm hearing stories like it was before my time, but 1976 apparently was the last time it was like this, where pretty much the whole summer was like hot. You know, it's been between like 30 to 40 degrees a lot of the time, which in US currency is like, 90 creeping up to 100. So yeah, it's been hot for the UK.
So Hawaii gets really hot. I'm originally from Michigan, which the weather there, it's schizophrenic. It's really cold. My friend texted me today. He's like, how are you? How are we hotter than you? I'm like, I don't know. Right now it's like 70 degrees, which is I'll take 70 degrees all year round. So let's get jamming. I've got a talk or workshop, improv workshop, July 17th, which coincides with your workshop. So it's kind of a bummer. I want to go to your nested loops again. So yeah, I've got a improv game workshop. It's all about, we're just going to be playing a bunch of silly games, help people get over fear of failure. NLP, the idea there's no such thing as failure, only feedback. We're going to actually find practical ways to implement that. Have you ever, I think I asked you've never done improv before, have you?
No, I did consider it. The closest I got to doing improv is around about 13 years ago. I was doing a lot of phobia work, and I started getting featured in a few newspapers and even TV about my phobia stuff. And I had this real imposter syndrome because I had this irrational fear of doing stand-up comedy. Like that for me was like the most daunting kind of thing. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to have to lean into this, because
Yeah.
if this is the fear, it's the edge of my comfort zone. So I did a couple of workshops on stand-up comedy, and they did a tiny bit on improv where you just have to like think on your feet and that kind of stuff. I never performed improv, but I did about maybe 15, 20 like stand-up comedy gigs. And I think you have to, I think the closest to improv on that is if you get heckled or something happens and then you can't follow your script,
Gotta
you
be
have
quick.
to think on your feet. Yeah, that's probably the closest. But I admire improv because I think it's that fusion of creativity, like the neural pathways are being built as they're doing it. Like you might have some structures and ideas, but it's the closest I think we get to being a kid, because children do improv all the time. Like they'll just, they go into their imagination and they become characters and they play out scenes. And I think being an adult, we kind of lose that magic of just allowing ourselves to kind of go outside the boundaries of who we are.
I've had a couple interesting times when we're doing improv. We go up we do improv jams on Fridays, and then we do a long form. We're trying to create a show on Sunday. But I got better with my object work. So if I imagine, let's say if somebody's out and they're imagining they're fishing, I'll come out, maybe pick up a fishing pole. But I'm getting to the point where I'm actually better. And once you get better at object work, it becomes real. Where before I used to, if I had an imaginary cup, I would just walk out and drop it. But then now I'm getting better. You don't want to let it go. You get to the point like, no, this is real. I need to set it down so I don't break it.
Yeah.
And I think it's very similar to the idea of go there first. You want to kind of create that reality.
Yeah, I think it's acting as if the imagination is real, and then what you were doing there is you're having continuity with an imagined object. That's the next level. And I don't know if you do this in hypnosis sessions, but what I tend to do is I imagine what my client is imagining and I kind of go there with them. So if I'm doing nested loops and I say, right, now you're in this place, I imagine myself almost kind of like where they are, so it's easier to remember. And I imagine that a lot of improv is like that, where you kind of, if you've got an object, you're not just kind of
The
like
shared reality.
I've got a fishing rod. Yeah, it's kind of like you're almost kind of like hallucinating that you've got the cup, you've got the fishing rod, they've got whatever they think, you imagine them with it. And I think hypnotherapists, as far as I'm, in my own experience and speaking to other hypnotherapists, because we're working with the imagination, we've got pretty good imaginations. And I have a feeling that a lot of people in hypnotherapy could utilize that in improv quite well compared to people that are never using their imaginations or never working with other people's imaginations.
Yeah, so aside from us kind of pitching our classes, my biggest pitch for people that want to learn improv, go find an improv workshop in your neck of the woods. Because it's not, I did a one-off class 4-5 years ago at HypnoThoughts. It was terrifying because you're putting yourself out in front of people, but it's super addicting.
You get that dopamine rush from doing it.
Dopamine, and then dopamine, and there's also the novelty, because it's always something new. You might have the same old character or characters that you've default to, but every scene is new. And there's times where you think a scene's going to go a certain way, but then, and this is also what improv is good for, is helping to break you out of having to drive everything. Because with improv, the idea is yes and. If somebody comes out, let's say, imagine you're fishing, but somebody comes out and if it's like, oh, that's a cool way to fly a kite, you're flying a kite. You don't argue with it. And it makes for way better comedy.
Yeah, because it's the switch. It's like a reframe in that moment.
Yep.
Like the kite or the fishing rod became a kite. And then the very thing that you were doing, you kind of have to change that. So if you're kind of doing it here, you've got to then kind of find the wind. And what benefits do you find? Because what I found when I started doing stand-up is that I just thought, right, I'd feel a bit more confident, in like public environments. And I did. When in my presentations, my confidence kind of went up. but it also spilled into like social confidence and different things. Like what's the benefit you get from improv, which has nothing to do with improv for you?
Confidence. I'm more playful. Communication is definitely better. I've actually in improv, I tend to talk really fast. So like, no, they intentionally told me like, no, you cannot talk first. You need to stop. And so it definitely helped me with confidence, with slowing down and spotting funny things. In improv, I don't know where the book is. There's this comedy troupe called the Upright Citizens Brigade. Yeah, this book, Upright Citizens Brigade. It's a improv troupe from I think New York. They have this thing in improv. There's this idea of spotting the unusual, like something unusual. So we've trained ourselves. So let's say if somebody says something like, "I need to," I'm trying to think of something like a weird thing. Oh no, I know. For example, my friend recently in Vegas, she tripped, skinned her knees, and she said something about the mean streets of Vegas. So when I heard her say the mean streets of Vegas, I immediately, from comedy improv training, I thought like, oh, the streets are I actually saw them as anthropomorphic. I actually saw them as like the streets are trying to like buckle her off. And if somebody
Like an
says,
attitude.
if somebody says something in improv that's a little weird, you can basically repeat it like, wait, why did you say that? Or what do you mean by that? We've trained ourselves to try to add, if somebody questions, if I say, the mean streets of Vegas are beating me up, you might say, wait, what did you say? And we'll repeat it back and forth. That way we know that's the funny thing. And then you can tell me to justify why I said that. And I can actually add a little bit of philosophy on like, hey, ever since I was a kid, the streets were tormenting. I'd be walking down the street and they would pop me off. And then that, I think it trains me to find the unusual in things, to find like the funny turn of phrase,
the absurd and the
exactly. So that's the key. We found out when we go to add the justification for why we said it, the slightly absurd. Although people at first we were worried about it, but once you find the absurd, that's where you want to go.
Yeah, no, I like that. And effectively, one of the things I love about NLP is this idea that it's better to have more resources than less resources. And what I'm hearing a lot from this is that doing all this improv, it sharpens your thinking. You can see things from different perspective. You can be adaptable in real time. Yes. These are excellent resource states that don't just work if you're doing improv with other people. They work in real life. If someone stops you and say, hey, what's this? You can think on your feet very quick because you have those resources.
Yeah, and it's the idea that we think like, oh, I need confidence to do this. Like, no. You just, I mean, you can use all the techniques in the world, but sometimes you just have to do it. Like, I'm sure our parents, I don't know about your parents, but stiff upper lip, like, just go out and do the thing. Just go out and do it, and then you will gain the confidence.
It tends to work that way, doesn't it? Like, doing the thing gives you the confidence, not waiting for the confidence first to do the thing.
Exactly. Then it's like needing motivation. Yeah, needing motivation to be motivated. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, you and I are both going to have classes on the same time.
Yeah, we have to clone ourselves, and we can do both. But
exactly.
While you're doing your talk on improv and your games, I'm going to be doing my 1 hour talk on nested loops. And nested loops is one of those things that for a long time, I loved the idea of it, but it just felt daunting.
Daunting. Yeah. And it's daunting, but you've made an interesting way to do it.
Yeah, it came. So I have a podcast called The Hypnotist, and in the early days of that, when I had not enough clients to kind of make the episodes, I was taking inspiration from movies. One of the early ones was the movie Limitless. And then not long after that, one of my favorite movies, Inception, I thought, okay, let me try and turn the structure of the movie Inception into a hypnosis experience. And what I'd learned about nested loops, it was almost like a Venn diagram what I'd learned about nested loops and then the structure of Inception was so close. But the key difference is that in traditional nested loops, you have story one, open a loop, digress into story two, open a loop, digress, create story three. In Inception, I use the distinction of levels of disassociation. So, they start off on a plane, and then there's a dream that they're in the back of a van being chased by bad guys, and then there's a dream within that they're in a hotel trying to find a code to a safe.
I'm getting zoned out.
Fortress.
I'm getting zoned out because I remember you using this metaphor in your class. I went to La La Land when you did that.
It's but what's fascinating about it is that it's easier to remember. And I remember when I was creating that hypnosis session thinking, how difficult would it be to follow the storyline of Inception if the environments were all similar, if they're all different inside buildings, but they're not. Like, one's a plane, one's a snow fortress, one's this kind of crumbling city. So even as an audience, it's quite a complex movie to follow, but you figure out, oh, they're at that level because they're in that place. And you've also got another distinction. The threshold shift they use in Inception is the same threshold shift. It's the machine, which is, it hooks you up and then you dream, and then that gets you into the new place. But within your imagination, you're not limited to the same device. So a lot of hypnotists use, you're walking down a flight of stairs, takes 10 steps. Why not have that start in one place and end in somewhere else? And then your staircase is simultaneously a deepener, but it's the threshold shift device to get you into a different environmental, which is another level of disassociation.
And what I want to pull up, I pulled this little beautiful diagram you had made. I love this thing. If you can explain this, I pulled this off HypnoThoughts. Where you talk about parts work, I really like. I adore parts work. I've done a lot of work with myself. How does parts work or any of these different techniques fit into the loops? Are you doing it at like the final loop?
Yeah, it depends. So first of all, what this is, if anyone's looking at this slightly confused, when I was a teenager, deeply insecure, and one of my belief systems was not good enough, so I became obsessed about learning ways to make myself better. So I was the geeky kid that was learning about hypnosis at 12 and mnemonics and
mind maps. Yeah, we're still doing this stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, for me at least, it now comes from a position of growth rather than an attempt to be worthy. But learning about Tony Buzan originally he had a book on speed reading and then a book on mnemonics, and then I found out his book on mind mapping, which for me was incredible because it's so useful for creativity but also memory recall. So this is a Tony Buzan style mind map. And the bit that you mentioned there about parts work is, I think a lot of people think that nested loops is a technique, and I don't consider nested loops a technique. I consider nested loops a structure of doing hypnosis, and therefore what I tend to do is I introduce the therapeutic modalities or techniques normally at about level 3 or 4 or 5 in the levels of disassociation. And how I tend to frame it is I think of Dilt's logical levels. So if I'm doing the core stuff, so identity and values, I want to be deeper down. And in my experience, a lot of parts work is at the identity or the values level. You've either got conflicting values or you've got a part of them which is one identity, one archetype competing with another archetype. So parts work is good to do quite deep. You want to get like 5 or 6 levels deep before you start doing parts work. Whereas if someone's got like a habit they want to change, yeah, you can go quite deep there. But
I got it. It's on the on Dilt's level. It ranks on like the behavioral level.
Yeah, so it's kind of concentric rings, or there's a version of looking at it where it's kind of like a pyramid. So effectively, what a lot of hypnotic suggestions try and do is they do the let's say the surface level, so environment, behavior, thoughts. But you've got the kind of the core, or if you look at it in a pyramid format, the things like identity and values. So generally, for more identity and value stuff, I want to have lower levels, more depths, more nested loops. And if I'm doing things that are based on environment, so let's say a post-hypnotic suggestion, if someone treats you like this, you do this. Well, that's quite close to the environmental level because it's a person doing a particular thing. So I might have that like 2 or 3 levels down in the levels of disassociation. So nested loops is almost like the container or the structure, and you can do all of the techniques that you've learned within hypnotherapy or NLP, but within a level of disassociation. So it's what I like about it is how much flexibility it gives you, and it also means that even if you've got like protocols and techniques that you love, by putting them within the almost the wrapper of a nested loop, it can create a really creative, unique experience for every single client. And then as a practitioner, you don't get bored doing the same technique because you can embed it within a very unique experience every single time.
Very amnesia inducing.
It can be. It can be. I think when you get people and what I like about and I didn't realize it until recently, but I used to struggle with very analytical or cynical clients. And I used to find that if I did the session with them, this is early on in my career, and I've changed, my sessions now are about 25 minutes long. When I started, they were like 50 minutes. But if I'm doing like 10 minutes of progressive relaxation and now your arms are relaxing and on the outward breath, for these cynical people, I could almost read their mind and like shake of the head, little micro expressions. Is this hypnosis? Is this, is it meant to feel like this? Why am I still aware of my own thoughts? When you give them, let's say 3 or 4 levels of disassociation within the first 3 minutes of a hypnosis session, they're like, and where am I now? Like, because they've gone to a memory and then they've gone down a staircase and then they've gone to something else. And then we've got maybe stage disassociation. So it's like there's a beach, there's a door, there's a hidden basement. In the hidden basement, there's a movie screen. And now we're getting to stage disassociation.
Then you walk into the movie scene. Yeah, I had something similar in your talk last year, fucking being zoned out and wondering like, okay, where am I? Where was I?
Yeah. Because it's cognitively overloading, and the practitioner can use the storytelling and they can use the threshold shift device as mnemonics. So the practitioner knows exactly where they are. The audience doesn't. And a lot of people have been on the receiving end of I would say, someone that likes to digress. And like they start the story and then they go off on a tangent and then they're introducing a new story. And I think Richard Bandler is kind of like the artist of that analog version of kind of nested loops. But you're kind of like, where am I? Like, because all these open loops create the unfinished business, makes it more engaging. You're paying more attention. All the incompleteness, like people hate hearing a bit of gossip and then not hearing the rest. They hate hearing a joke without the punchline. Like incompleteness is a mind fuck. Yes. Why does so many online articles use clickbait? Clickbait is creating an open loop, and you've got to read the article to close the loop. Like
Zignarek, I think it is.
So we've got all of these things. So the open loops keep the engagement. The nested loops create the levels of depth, and then you can introduce something like parts therapy, or you can use an NLP technique, or you can use IFS that you mentioned before, or whatever it might be, or just direct suggestion or embedded commands. You can use all of these within the actual nested loops. And then I tend to end most of my sessions, at least, with future pacing. But why not make future pacing another level of disassociation? You see yourself disassociated, you step into the associated version of you when you're confident that the future version of you is doing things the way that you would want. That's another level, and it's such a
it can't hurt it. It can't hurt it to add that.
It doesn't hurt it, and not only that, but I think if the future pacing is purely disassociated, they can see what they want but they're not getting a taste of experiencing what they want. And in my experience, it's an associated first person thought that tends to be connected to emotion. That's why when people have PTSD, they're not generally having flashbacks from a third person perspective. They tend to teleport back into the moment. It's a first person memory. So why not give them a taste of that? It's always a taste. I want to leave it as they're an observer of the future that they want, because if it feels like they've already had that, you kind of lose some of the motivation to want to then achieve it. But give them a taste. If they've lost 20 pounds, right, see yourself in the mirror, step into the mirror, become that. How good does it feel to build this weight? Like, what's your, what do you do different? What clothes do you wear? Like, get them to feel the emotional connection to that. Then you work backwards and you do it in reverse order.
Speaking in regards to giving them a small taste of it, there's a big problem with toxic positivity. Just be positive. Just be positive. And I always make this joke when people are like, just be positive. I'm like, yeah, I'm positive. I'm fucking miserable, but thank you. That's not helping. Have you ever heard of Whoop? WOOP?
Is it like a health tracker, the band?
No, so there is a health tracker, but this one is Wish Outcome Obstacle Plan. It's like
okay.
There's a good book called Rethinking Positive Thinking, and it's mental contrasting where W is wish, O is outcome, second O is obstacle, P is plan. So you think about your wish, what do you want? Then you close your eyes and you think about the outcome. What's this going to do for me? Visualize that for a minute or two, and then you visualize the second O is obstacle. What internal struggle would prevent me from getting this? And then P is implementation plan. So if X, then Y. If fear of failure, I will take 3 deep breaths. If this happens, I will do this. Researchers found out when they were having people mentally contrast, I think their goal with the struggle, I think it was their systolic blood pressure, but they noticed there was a spike in the blood pressure versus just visualizing the goal, versus just like visualizing the goal and then getting the feel-good chemicals. So speaking of I digress. I wanted to ask you, I know you mentioned memory palaces. How do you use memory palace? Do you use memory palaces with nested loops?
I find that I don't need to. Most of my sessions, they're 25 minutes long, and maybe there is 7 or 8 levels of disassociation. And I remember from my psychology degree, Miller in 1957, the magic number 7 plus or minus 2. Yep. We're like, we've got enough capacity to kind of remember about 7 chunks of information anyway. But with using mnemonics and storytelling, so one of the things that I like to do, for example, when I do a talk on movie metaphors, is I say, right, does someone have a favorite movie that they haven't seen in at least a decade? They love that movie, they've not seen it in a decade. And then like someone raises their hand. It's like, okay, tell me, even though you've not seen it in a decade, rough characters, like rough storyline, what's the plot, what happens? And they can do it. And my point is that when you follow a sequence like that with characters and locations and scenes and a plot and a purpose, you've got a good recollection of that without, and contrast that with stuff in high school that you try to revise and memorize.
Yeah.
That's completely gone. And a story that you didn't even try to remember, you can still remember it a decade later. So a lot of my hypnosis sessions use that kind of, right, we're starting here and then we go here and then we go here and then we go here. And because it uses mnemonics all the way, they become like the breadcrumbs that can't be eaten in Hansel and Gretel. You can find your way back home. So for that, I tend to use storytelling and kind of, we mentioned absurdity in improv. Absurdity helps with mnemonics. You don't just want to have a mirror. Why not have a jewel encrusted mirror and have the mirror on a beach, and that you can walk through the mirror like Alice did in Wonderland to somewhere else? If you just said, and then there's a door. Okay, yeah, a door on a beach is quite absurd if it's not attached to a building.
A glowing door, a glowing door,
door, or a 4-dimensional portal, or like these kind of things. They activate.
No kidding, it's your imagination. Make it cool.
Make it cool. So therefore, you don't really need memory palaces. Where and I kind of mentioned this, and you quite rightly teased me on it.
Yeah, if you want to be a psychopath, this is crazy. I like to Are you going to try
Yeah, so
in the talk?
I'm not going to do it because there won't be enough time. Like it takes me 25 minutes to do like 7 or 8 levels of disassociation. I will end the talk with about 5 or 6 levels of disassociation, just kind of like suggested from the audience in the talk, just so they can see me doing it in real time. But what I am attempting, and I think I saw that you had Mike Mandel on your on your talk. You talked with him recently. But I love the Mike Mandel and Chris Thompson playing cards with all the kind of the suggestions.
Yep.
So what I was thinking is that, okay, I can create a different thing. So let's say diamonds are all, let's say, nature, and clubs are all space or cosmic, and hearts are all oceanic or something like that. And then I could kind of structure like the queen is always this. So I can create that kind of structure. And then I think what I would do is I would need to then create a memory palace, so that as I'm going through in real time, doing a session of 52 nested loops, then I would need to know. And I'll test it a couple of times, but I think just the traditional storytelling, that I could probably do it but there would be a risk to that, to kind of know exactly where I am, because to use the Hansel and Gretel metaphor, like you're using the breadcrumbs, but that's a long trek in the woods. Whereas a memory palace, you can then, and for people that aren't familiar with the memory palace, it doesn't have to be like a medieval, kind of palace kind of structure. It just has to be an environment that you know very well, and that you then place certain things within the environment that you're in. So there's ways of doing it, but effectively the attempt is to do a real live, and I'll stream it on YouTube Live so people know it isn't kind of edited. But at
this point, it's almost showing off. It's almost showing off to do. I mean, 52 loops, that'll be deep. I'm not saying showing off. I'm not showing off in like a cocky way. But you catch my drift. But it'll be a great feat if you can pull it off.
Yeah, and I like the fact that there'll be some jeopardy that maybe I don't like, and it goes back to what you're saying about that. I think failure over feedback. I don't care if I can't do it. Like my ego won't be attached to whether or not I can actually make it perfect, because I like the challenge of there'll be an audience watching me attempt to do 52 levels of disassociation and find my way back in the exact order that I went. But I know that my skills as a hypnotist are going to improve even by attempting to do that. Even
it's
if
an experiment. I framed I started framing my goals as experiments because it's way better. There's way less pressure. I'm like, if it doesn't work, then whatever. I've got next week. I've known memory palaces for a long time, and then I heard of Ron White. He's a U.S. memory champion. Check his stuff out. He memorized, I think, everybody that died in the Iraq War or Afghanistan War, and he basically walked through all of Dallas and Texas, and he created like a live memory palace. So I think he memorized like 2,000 some people. Close his eyes and he just rattles them off the top of your head, off the top of his head.
Yeah, it's incredible. And just on the memory palace, like I've recently wrote a screenplay, and it was actually inspired by Chuck, who wrote Fight Club. Because
we're still trying to say his last name. I think it's Palinchuk. I think it's
Palinchuk or Palanyuk or something like that.
Yeah.
But Chuck wrote Fight Club. That's all we need to know. And he came to a couple of my talks, and at the same and the first one I think was about 3 years ago. And at that one, I was talking to a couple of people at HypnoThoughts about an idea I had for a movie, and it uses hypnosis and past life regression and all of this kind of stuff. But it also uses a memory palace. And I've now written that screenplay, and I'll give you the mini version of it. But basically, a hypnotherapist uses past life regression to find some hidden gold that is only in the memory of a past life, but the gold is real. And he's like, holy fuck, like I can actually get real value from a memory. And then he finds a child that was Satoshi Nakamoto in a previous life, and therefore the keys to $117 billion of Bitcoin are in a memory palace within the mind of a child. And then he has to use past life regression to decode the keys hidden in a memory palace in a child.
That sounds like the only. interesting screenplay with hypnosis, because most movies about hypnosis, like most hypnotists, it's funny. Hollywood likes sensationalized stories, so most hypnotists are like, this is dumb. I'm like, yeah, but it's not. It's what the public wants. But actually,
Yeah.
I do like that because it almost has a feel of what was that magic movie with Woody Harrelson? Now You See Me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
With I was gonna say with memory palaces. Oh, so in improv, there's this exercise called That Reminds Me. So you're basically in a small circle, and somebody maybe comes up with a word. Let's say they say microphone, and then one person will tell a story. They'll think about a story that reminds them of. And then the person next to them, they'll say Adam, and they'll use like a verb, an adjective plus a verb or an adjective plus a noun. And say, Adam, your story of confusing microphone reminds me of blah 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 blah. And the reason we do that is to one, build the memory up so we can, if we need to do comedic callbacks later. So I've been thinking of doing a memory palace just for my improv stuff. So I've got a memory palace for my old apartment, but I'm thinking about maybe just doing a memory palace for improv work. That way, if I see something funny on stage, I can go, oh, I can call it something like verb noun, and then I can imagine, like a confused microphone, I can imagine that on part of my memory palace.
That's very cool. And I would say Memory Palace has got connotations to the mean streets of Vegas in the sense that, you know, like most people when they hear Memory Palace, like they are imagining some kind of Disney palace.
Yeah.
And the thought that popped into my mind is kind of like having the most rundown, distressed kind of palace kind of possible. Like it's like a dump of a place.
You've got so oh god, what's that movie, Snatch or Train Spotting?
Oh yeah, like a drug den. Like
you got like junkies in the corner. Remember the baby that's falling on the ceiling? I thought about this earlier. Do you let's say if you want to give somebody maybe 2 or 3 different resources, do you do you give them different resources per loop?
Yeah, generally what I tend to do in the first couple of levels, it's not about opening a loop necessarily in the first level of disassociation or even giving a suggestion. You know, you can do it, but you don't have to. So one open loop that I like to do, particularly for weight loss, is I'll say, you know, you find yourself in this place in nature, and there's an unfinished jigsaw puzzle, and a part of you, the analytical part, now attempts to kind of fix that puzzle, but the part that wants to change sees a doorway somewhere, a glowing door, and goes off. Now we've created an open loop there, which has this element that the analytical part that likes to ask all the questions is busy trying to fix a puzzle, but we don't know what that puzzle is and we don't know what it's going to show. And then when we return on the reverse journey of the nested loops for weight loss, I'll say, okay, and then you see yourself having lost all the weight. So that's a future pacing. They step into the puzzle, you know, do all that. But part of the puzzle is they realize that actually before they believed that they had to lose weight in order to be happy. And what the puzzle actually shows them is that all along it was about happily losing weight. So, because what we're going to do, and what I've learned is that most people with weight loss, they make a miserable strategy only justifiable because the end justifies the means. But actually, how do people gain weight? They gain weight by making the journey of eating more pleasurable. You know, so why wouldn't that work with losing weight as well? Like, I go to the gym because I like going to the gym, not because I hope it's going to give me something at the end of it. You know, it's the journey. So you don't have to kind of open a loop and you don't have to give a resource state in every one. You just can do that. Generally, I like to, the first 2 or 3 loops, just get them to a place where they're like, oh, like, where am I now? And you can see the whole body change when they're at the 3rd level of disassociation. Then I might start introducing glowing ball of energy, or the resource state might come from inner child work, and the younger version of themselves gives them a resource that they've lost connection with. Like, you've got what I like about it is so versatile and creative, and I think I'm like you in the sense that, you know, the creativity adds to the appeal. Like, there's creativity in improv, there's creativity in nested loops, like, and that's what makes it more engaging for the client and actually more engaging for the practitioner as well. Because for busy hypnotherapists, like if you're seeing similar clients and doing similar techniques, you can get to a point where you risk going on autopilot. You can't ever do that with nested loops because you have to figure out, okay, where are we and what level of disassociation and what loop have we opened but not closed yet? It's not cognitively overwhelming, but you have to pay attention. So it forces mindfulness because you can't just be, and then take another deep breath and relax. Like you can't just be on autopilot. You have to be following the journey with the.
You have to paint a picture with them. You have to paint a picture.
Yeah, I would say to take that metaphor even further, you're creating a holographic world and a world within worlds within worlds, and you go on the journey with them. That's really what it's like.
I remember, I should listen. I'm sure you have the recording from last year. I remember if we were in a pyramid and there was, God, this is going to sound like I went down a stripper pole, but I just remember there was like, is there like a pole that we slid down?
Yeah, there was a fireman's pole.
Fireman's, yeah. So it was not, so I was not in my imagination being a stripper going down a pole in your class.
You may have been. I never said the word stripper. You imagine yourself as a stripper. Exactly. That's all on you, Antonio.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that was a year ago, and you can still remember a fireman's pole linked to Egypt, and that's the power of mnemonics and threshold shift devices.
Wasn't there something about shimmering water? I could have sworn.
Yeah, there could have been, and my memory is good, but I can't remember the exact structure because I kind of think about it as almost like Etch-a-Sketch. I can remember all the sequence while I'm doing it, but when that session's gone, it's kind of like it's I don't need it anymore. So it kind of goes. But I can recall it for the session, and then like that's almost like the open loop. Like I need to kind of remember the sequence while the session's done. When the session's gone, that loop is closed. Okay, move on, free up the cognitive resources for whatever I'm thinking on next.
Man, I could talk for hours on this. So I let's go over the classes again. I've got July 17th, 4 p.m. You can either come and learn how to have fun playing improv games, or you can go and learn a very, very good skill. I mean, big deal. You learn how to do like 7 loops of nested loops.
You know what, Antonio, there is a strategy where they can do both. Okay. Why don't they see that? And it isn't cloning themselves, and it isn't a parallel universe. Here's what they should do. They should definitely go to your 1 hour talk and then do my post-conference workshop for the whole day. That's the big win.
No kidding. I can't believe I didn't think of that. Dude, that's ingenious. Yeah. So what can people get out of is it a 1 or 2 day post?
So it's a 1 day course. You're gonna, in the 1 hour talk, if you brutally reject Antonio and come to mine instead of his.
Yeah. But listen, I'm getting better at improv. When we die on stage, we have to pretend like we're being shot. So
I felt your pain there. But if you brutally reject Antonio like the mean streets of Vegas, then essentially what you're learning is a lot of theory, why nested loops make sense, a lot of the structure. I'm going to do a live example. I think that's where the penny drops for a lot of people, is when they actually experience that 15-minute live example of a nested loop at the end. They're like, okay, that's what it's like. And I think that inspires people because they're like, okay, this seemed quite complex, even though I break it down in terms of structure and mnemonics. But it's like when they hear me do it, it's kind of like, oh, okay, I witnessed that. I know that it's possible to do like a real nested loop session, completely generated. And I would say that is like improv, because the suggestions of the nested loop come from the room, so I can't.
Yeah, remember you do the things on the
flip
paper
charts. Yeah. So that's what you get in the 1 hour. On the 1 day, I'm a big believer in the levels of learning. I think it was Bandler that created this, but it might have been Diltz again. But we've got unconscious incompetence. We don't know how bad we are at the thing. If you've never done nested loops, you don't know how good or bad you are at that. And then you attempt it and you're like, oh, I'm conscious of my incompetence. and then we learn a bit, and then you're conscious of your competence in like, this is the strut moment. It's like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. What I want people to get to is a level of unconscious competence where they can just do nested loops without doing it. So it's learning about what and why and how, but actually on the one day, it's about learning it at the skill level. So actually on the day, it's going to be lots of games of, okay, almost like improv. Someone starts a level of disassociation and then it goes to someone else and they have to continue that level of disassociation. It's actually going to have a lot of kind of improv because nested loops have to be generated in real time. So I want people to acquire the skill, not acquire the knowledge, because I think there's too many people with too much knowledge and not enough competency. Yeah. That's my goal.
So what you're saying is they should come to my class on Friday to get the skills, the improv skills, and take that into your class to learn how to be more flexible.
What I'm saying. Yeah, totally. And it's true, by the way, because and I would say if I could claim myself, I definitely would come to you, because I think there are certain things that you can never reach a level where you can't learn anymore. And I think improvisation is one of them. Like, no matter how good you get, there's always a level higher that you can get. And because it's thinking on your feet, it's finding associations and patterns and creativity. And I think it's, I'm glad you're doing that talk, because it's such a valuable skill. And I think it's the antidote to scripts. There's a lot of people that treat scripts like a comfort blanket because they don't want to go off piste and they don't want to kind of trust their own ability to create hypnosis
conversations.
Sessions.
Like, we don't go into any conversation, but okay, they're going to say this, I'm going to say this, and then it doesn't work. There's an improv game we could play real quick. It's a real easy one. Like, I really love this one. It's for helping people to come up with good choices. It's called premise lawyer. So somebody comes up with a crazy premise, and then people will just justify the hell out of that premise. I'm trying to find a way to make this game where maybe you can think of a way where I can have people in the class maybe come up with a negative belief, and then we reframe it and then justify that reframe, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. So it's playing devil's advocate because you want people to hold a belief that is unuseful and ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, for example, come up with a crazy premise, and this it can be like glasses should be made out of nickels, or anything that's crazy.
Okay. Rudeness should be mandatory. Like, people should be rude to each other, and it should be forced.
100%. We should be rude to everybody. It'll toughen people up. And when you're constantly rude to people, when people are constantly rude to people, when you see something that's a little bit nice, then you're like, there's a gem. So that's
training altitude. We need to recalibrate the nation, because by being rude, people won't be easily triggered. They're not going to be sensitive. It toughens them up. It gives them calluses.
We'll just be a bunch of
resilience.
We're going to be a bunch of assholes running around.
Yeah, and I would say this is already happening in certain places. Like, you think of like certain people in the military, certain people in kind of like tough industries, they are rude to each other. They call it banter, but maybe they needed that and it evolved because it's so useful. And actually in polite society, we've lost that ability. So it should be mandatory that we're fucking rude to people.
100%. I mean, some people are just...
That's a shit shirt, by the way.
What?
That's all. That shirt is atrocious.
Oh, I know. And God, that shirt you're wearing, Jesus. And those muscles, oh my God. Can they get any bigger? Jesus, what a show off. Yeah.
I like that we're actually getting into the rudeness. That's a great little game. I like that.
Well, it's funny. I'm an East Coaster. I'm from Michigan originally. And I always joke with people that West Coasters are passive aggressive. East Coasters were just aggressive. And it's
that's an interesting distinction, because it is the stereotype, like classic New Yorkers, like it's just kind of like, yeah, fuck you, what do you want? That kind of.
Yeah. But sometimes I like that attitude. I've heard I want somebody to be mean and then nice versus nice and then mean.
True, because then again, it's recalibration, isn't it? And I think they've done studies on this in psychology, that if there's someone that you don't like originally and then you learn to like them, you like them more than if your first impression is that they're really nice and then they do something that annoys you. It's just the contrast.
Okay, the contrast principle.
Yeah.
Man, I can't believe, has it been an hour already? Thank God this has been one of the smoothest ones. I don't have to do a bunch of edits. Thank God. So come out to our classes, Improv, 4 p.m., July 17th, next Friday, or you can brutally reject me and go to his nested loop class.
Amazing. Or someone else's. They could brutally reject both of us and just to see someone else. Like how cruel. They've listened to this for an hour and then they could reject both of us. Like that would be the rudeness we need to toughen us up, I think.
Definitely. You're gonna see me walking around just pissed off.
And we'll know why, because someone you didn't know rejected you. Awesome. Antonio, I'm going to see you in less than a week. I'll see you in Vegas.
I'll talk to you soon. Aloha.
Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. If you've enjoyed this episode or got some value from it, please give it a 5-star rating and review. And maybe you know someone that would also benefit from this particular episode, in which case share the episode with them so they can also get the benefit too. And if you would like to listen to this episode where it's just the hypnosis, so no intro, no outro, no explanation, just the hypnosis and completely ad-free, there will be a link in the description where you can subscribe at a very low cost and only get access to the hypnosis. So if that's of interest, please check that out. Thank you again for being a regular listener of The Hypnotist, and I'll see you again soon for more.